Imagine being 10, enjoying camping and survival skills, only to find yourself marching to a far, darker purpose. The Hitler Youth, a program designed not to empower kids, but to transform them into obedient tools for one of history's most sinister agendas. Hitler once said, "He alone who owns the youth gains the future." The Hitler Youth was fueled by a belief that controlling young minds was the key to a lasting empire. These innocent children were lured in with promises of adventure and camaraderie. Gradually, their true purpose emerged. They were being groomed into loyal followers of the Nazi state. Welcome to Historical Digs, where we dig out the secrets from the annals of history. Alfons Heck, Bannführer, high-ranking officer of the Hitler Youth. Alfons Heck envisioned being devoted to a cause for which he risked everything. A young boy who became a high-ranking leader in the Hitler Youth. Alfons Heck was born on the 3rd of November 1928. He was raised on his grandparents' farm in Wittlich, Germany. At age 6, he began school, where his teacher introduced Nazi ideology. By age 10, Heck had joined the ranks of 5 million other German boys in Deutsches Jungvolk. He was extremely involved in the powerful agenda that promised unity, pride, and a great Germany. After a brief year in flight school, and as the officer in charge of 180 of Flying Hitler Youth, 16-year-old Alfons Heck acquired the rank of Bannführer, the highest-ranking officer in the organization where he commanded thousands of youth under the Nazi regime. American troops captured Alfons Heck in his hometown on the 7th of March 1945. During his captivity, he was forced to look at documentary footage of concentration and death camps. He didn't believe them and said to his friends, "What do they take us for? This stuff is staged." Alfons Heck recounted that the French, enraged by the insensitivity displayed, began striking the individuals with rifle butts. Shouting, they exclaimed, "You goddamn Nazi bastards! Do you think this is a comedy? This is what you have done." When the tide turned against Germany in World War II, the charade of Nazi Germany started to crack. Alfons Heck began to witness the atrocities of the Nazi regime as many of his young friends died in battle. And the Nazi ideals he once saw as noble began to reveal their emptiness. This painful acknowledgement pushed Heck to share his story openly, working to educate future generations about the dangers of unchecked ideologies. His survival wasn't just physical. It was also a painful emotional journey of reckoning and atonement. After the war, Heck not only faced the trauma of losing his comrades, but also the deep psychological scars of his brainwashing. Heck watched too many of his friends and fellow youth leaders die in battles they were barely equipped to fight, following orders they didn't fully understand. The glory, unity, and purpose he'd been promised were replaced with horror and devastation. After a few years, Heck discovered the enormity of Hitler Youth and the lies that had shaped his beliefs, and he grasped the true horror of what he's been a part of. He was filled with guilt and shame because of how easily he'd been molded into a tool of a violent ideology. They were the perfect Nazi products, trained to obey without questions. In 1985, he published a book, A Child of Hitler, Germany in the Days When God Wore a Swastika, on account of his life under Nazism. Later on, he published another book, The Burden of Hitler's Legacy, in 1988. HBO made a documentary based on Alphonse Heck's book, Heil Hitler: Confessions of a Hitler Youth. He revealed his experience in the Hitler Youth.
The experience of the Hitler Youth in Nazi Germany constitutes a massive case of child abuse. Out of millions of basically innocent children.
He died at age 76 on April 12, 2005, and after spending the rest of his life educating others on the dangers of blind loyalty, asked a haunting question that still lingers after his story ends. If one generation could be so easily led astray, could it happen again? Melita Maschmann, a German memoirist. What happens when patriotism is weaponized? Melita Maschmann's story reveals how a young girl's sense of duty led her into the heart of the Nazi machine. Melita Maschmann was born on the 10th of January 1918. At the age of 15, Melita joined Hitler Youth against her family's will. She joined the movement not out of hate, but to do something noble and patriotic, but later found herself in unimaginable horrors. Like many of the young children, she was drawn by promises of camaraderie and loyalty to her country. Melita worked tirelessly on the Nazi propaganda front, but as the war ended, she was forced to confront the bitter reality of what she had supported. Melita was brought up in a conservative, middle-class family in Germany, and her early life was shaped by her education in strict nationalist values. As a young girl, she was an eager student, curious, and determined to excel. The school she had attended was heavily emphasized on discipline and national pride, laying the groundwork for her future involvement in the Nazi youth movement. Melita joined the Bund Deutscher Mädel, or League of German Girls, as a young teen and quickly rose through the ranks, gaining responsibilities in Nazi propaganda. She was convinced that her work in the Hitler Youth was honorable, driven by a desire to make her country proud and contribute to its supposed betterment. Her zeal led her to travel across Germany, spreading Nazi ideology to other young girls. Melita underwent werewolf training organized by the Schutzstaffel, a program designed to establish a covert resistance force that could operate behind Allied lines as they advanced through Germany. They were told to fight in uniform and, if captured, to claim the rights of prisoners of war. Maschmann said, "I had gone into the war prepared to die, and this I was still ready to do." She was arrested by American troops in 1945 at the age of 27 and was forced to complete a mandatory denazification course. She was released in 1948. This imprisonment did nothing to decrease her commitment to National Socialism. She said, "I undertook to look after the most prominent of the political prisoners who was still in the men's camp there. I had meanwhile obtained a job as a reporter on a daily paper. At least for the time being, my employers were not to be told about my political past." Unlike many who remained silent, Maschmann faced her past head-on, writing a memoir titled Account Rendered, in which she recalled her experiences and struggled with guilt. She spent much of her life wrestling with her role in the Hitler Youth, reflecting on how easily she and others were manipulated into serving a horrific cause. Melita was never married and had no children. She spent the last 10 years of her life suffering from Alzheimer's disease and died in 2010. Melita Maschmann taught us that the hardest battle is the one we fight against the beliefs we once held dear. Helmuth Hubener, a young martyr against the Nazi regime. What drives a 16-year-old to defy an entire regime? For Helmuth Hubener, the answer lay in a dangerous search for the truth. Helmuth Hubener was born on the 8th of January 1925. He was a young boy who saw the evil truth behind the Nazi propaganda and decided to risk everything to unravel it. Helmuth was just 16 years old when he began a courageous resistance from within Nazi Germany. Unlike many in the Hitler Youth, who accepted Nazi ideals without question, he saw through the lies and deception, becoming one of the youngest known resistance fighters against Hitler's dictatorship. Helmuth Hubener came from a political religious family, and he belonged to the LDS or Latter-day Saints Church. His adoptive father was Hugo, who gave him the name Hubener. He was a Nazi sympathizer and was initially a member of the Hitler Youth, as membership was practically mandatory for German youth. But unlike most, Hubener didn't blindly accept the propaganda he was taught. He finished middle school in 1941, he made new friends, and one of them had a communist background. And as a result, he began listening to enemy radio broadcasts. In Nazi Germany, listening to foreign media wasn't just frowned upon, it was outright forbidden, labeled as treason. One evening, Helmuth Hubener stumbled upon something extraordinary hidden away in a closet, a shortwave radio belonging to his older half-brother Gerard, gifted by a soldier returning from France. Curiosity took hold, and Helmuth began tuning in to forbidden BBC broadcasts. These broadcasts, rare and dangerous, offered uncensored news about the war. As he listened, the veil lifted. He came face to face with the grim truths about the Nazi regime, its cruelty, its hypocrisy, and the reality of a war the German people weren't being told about. The stories he heard were nothing like the glorified, victorious tales fed to him by the Nazis. Instead, he learned about the harsh reality of German losses, the brutality of Hitler's regime, and the growing certainty of Germany's defeat. Fueled by a deep need to share the truth, Helmuth began typing anti-Nazi leaflets in secret. These leaflets told a different story, one that highlighted the lies spread by Berlin and exposed Hitler, Joseph Goebbels, and other Nazi leaders for the criminals they were. Helmuth loathed Hitler and called him the people's seducer, people's corrupter, and the people's traitor. He wrote passionately about the futility of the war, the horrors committed in the name of the fatherland, and even the harsh mistreatment within the Hitler Youth. Determined to make a difference, Helmuth distributed these leaflets to open the eyes of those around him, knowing full well the danger he faced for each word he shared. Helmuth wrote in one of his pamphlets, "German boys, do you know the country without freedom, the country of terror and tyranny? Yes, you know it well, but are afraid to talk about it. They have intimidated you to such an extent that you don't dare talk for fear of reprisals. Yes, you are right. It is Germany, Hitler Germany. Through their unscrupulous terror tactics against young and old, men and women, they have succeeded in making you spineless puppets to do their bidding." He began translating his pamphlets into French, hoping they would reach prisoners of war and spark a broader resistance. But his bold actions didn't go unnoticed. A co-worker, Heinrich Mann, a loyal Nazi Party member, observed Helmuth's suspicious activity and reported him to the authorities. Helmuth Hubener was arrested by the Gestapo in his workplace on February 5, 1942. He faced a fate worse than death, condemned not only to the executioner's embrace, but also stripped of his very humanity. In the shadows of his frigid cell, the guards reveled in their power, free to inflict torment and degradation upon him, while the absence of bedding left him shivering. He was finally sentenced to death on August 11, 1942, by the Special People's Court in Berlin, after he said, "Now I must die, even though I have committed no crime. So now it's my turn, but your turn will come." On October 27, 1942, at 8:13 p.m., he was beheaded by guillotine in the execution room at Plötzensee Prison in Berlin. Helmut Hubener's story leaves us with a valuable lesson that no matter what, adhere to truth. Never support evil, and freedom will come eventually. A generation shaped by fear, loyalty, and propaganda. This is the legacy of the Hitler Youth. But within this dark chapter, there were glimmers of hope and resistance that changed history. The Hitler Youth is a stomach-churning reminder of how power, manipulation, and fear can shape an entire generation. Thousands of children were indoctrinated and molded into soldiers for a cause they often didn't fully understand. Yet, in the shadows of this rigid system, some dared to resist, questioning the lies they were fed and risking their lives to expose the truth. Figures like Alphonse Heck, Melita Moshman, and Helmut Hubener serve as both warnings and inspirations, proof that even in the darkest times, some find the courage to stand against the tide. As we meditate on the legacy of the Hitler Youth, we must remember that the manipulation of youth is one of the most dangerous tools in the hands of a regime. The stories of those who survived and defied remind us that the fight for truth and justice will always matter, no matter how loud or how small the voice is. The stories of those who survived the Hitler Youth challenge us to question, what happens when a generation is manipulated, and how do we ensure it never happens again? Thank you for joining us on this journey of the Hitler Youth of manipulation, resistance, and survival. If the stories of these courageous people taught you to always stand up against evil, then don't forget to subscribe and come back for more history digs.